Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or that waking around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, eating really clean, working out really hard in the gym, yet nothing seems to work. You're putting in all this effort and it feels like you're not getting anything out of it, or you even start seeing the scale move in the opposite direction. But we know now that your body is inherently different than what it was prior to experiencing these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to help you really understand what happens to your body in this time of your life, how to reach your health and fitness goals, how to live a life full of vitality and feel in control and at home in your body again, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today is a part 2. Last episode, I went over causes of sudden weight gain during perimenopause and menopause, what can be causing the scale to fluctuate, and the hormonal imbalances that can really contribute to weight gain or weight loss resistance. And we talked about some of the things that can really help you improve. However, there was one thing that was the same for every single hormonal imbalance and a lot of the scale fluctuation things as well. And the solution was to de-stress, to improve those cortisol levels. So today I would have kept going last week, but we were already over an hour and I was like, okay, I got to cut this off somewhere. So here's the part 2. I'm going to talk about a little bit more nuanced about cortisol, the different stages of adrenal dysfunction. And we're also going to talk about how to improve those cortisol levels, because this is like the meat and potatoes. If you can do this, you are going to be so much more successful. Or because even if you don't do this stuff, you're going to have a really hard time. Weight loss isn't going to be sustainable. You're going to keep feeling like garbage. This is what we need to address, because cortisol literally influences every single cell in our body. So we know that cortisol gets a really bad rap, right? I'm always talking about how we need to improve our cortisol levels. If they're too low, we have to bring them down. If they're too high, we have a cortisol curve. We want it to look a certain way. And we talk a lot about how it really derails your progress, right? And can really affect your ability to see results and feel good during perimenopause and menopause. But it does have an important role. And it is necessary to have it. It's more just when we have it chronically elevated and then it tanks afterwards where we start having issues. So I'm going to talk about those different stages that we go through where things kind of, don't go so well anymore, right? So cortisol is actually a vital hormone. We do need it. It's produced in our adrenal glands. And our adrenal glands is also where testosterone, estrogen, progesterone are produced once our ovaries are no longer able to produce those for us. Estrogen will be produced in other areas of our body as well, like the brain and in fat cells, things like that. But the adrenals really do start to influence our body a little bit more. They are how our body produces a lot of the things that we lose during perimenopause and menopause. So healthy adrenals are really important, because if those aren't functioning well, then we have a really hard time. It's important to know as well that cortisol is something that we call a catabolic hormone, which means it breaks things down. So it breaks down proteins for energy. And when we don't have enough carbohydrates, and we don't have enough calories coming in, and we don't have enough food coming in general, and we're not recovering well, and all these things that really elevate cortisol that I'm going to go into a little bit later, our body breaks down muscle and gut lining. So muscle from our gut lining, smooth muscle, for energy. It takes it to our liver. It turns it into sugars that our body can then dump into our bloodstream and use that for energy, which causes insulin to come up. Insulin comes up. It shuttles the sugars from that bloodstream into different cells in your body. Your blood sugar comes down again. Cortisol is going to break down muscle and your gut lining as well, which again, is going to slow down metabolism, make it harder to see results. And you're not going to get anything out of the things that you're doing, which really sucks. And you're going to end up with blood sugar problems, even though you're not eating a lot of food, even though you're not having a ton of carbohydrates. This cycle keeps happening. And if we don't address it, you're eventually going to become insulin resistant. So it's important to note that that is one of the big things that cortisol does, is break things down for energy. And we don't want to break down our gut lining, because then we start having leaky gut and bloating and food sensitivities and autoimmune conditions. We don't want to break down muscle mass for energy, because then we're not getting stronger. We're not looking fit and toned despite working out in the gym. We are losing our insulin sensitivity, because the more muscle you have, the more insulin sensitive you are, so you have better blood sugar control. You also want to preserve muscle mass because it burns a lot of calories at rest, which makes our metabolism higher, which means our body's good at burning calories, making weight loss a lot easier. Okay, so we don't want cortisol to be breaking down everything in our body for us. So most of the body's receptors are going to have cortisol receptors on them. Okay, most of the cells, like cortisol is everywhere. And it affects so many things. Like, you have no idea how much this one hormone really influences everything in our body. It helps regulate our blood sugar levels, like I just mentioned. It regulates metabolism, so how many calories our body burns at rest. It can either make inflammation good, or it can make inflammation worse. It can regulate our salt and water balance, our blood pressure control, improve our memory. So like, if you think of, for example, because cortisol is released during fight or flight. So think about like a really, this is not a nice thing to think about, but think of like a really like traumatic experience. Maybe it was a car crash, or, a very vivid memory when you were young that was like kind of scary. You remember that very, very easily, right? You remember the colors, how you were feeling, the smells, the sounds. If you think of any car accident you may have been in, like, you remember those things. That's because your memory improves when you're in fight or flight. So that's not like a weird thing that happens. Like, that's a physiological response. And then the other thing that really sucks to hear is that visceral fat, so the fat around our belly, around our organs, has 4 times the cortisol receptors than anywhere else in our body. So we want to be aware of that, because people are like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, do I really have to address this? Cortisol needs somewhere to go. So as long as you have irregular cortisol in your body, it needs somewhere to go. And that way your body is going to hold on to belly fat because it needs somewhere to store it. So as long as cortisol is an issue, belly fat's going to be damn near impossible to get rid of. So this is like a huge thing that you need to be aware of, and how it works and what triggers cortisol responses, things like that. So then we have this thing called the cortisol curve. So it's not just consistent throughout the day. It's going to be higher in the morning, and then it's supposed to go down as the day goes on, is really low at nighttime. That's how we stay asleep. If we see cortisol spike, then we wake up. So we want to have this nice little, almost like little S curve to our cortisol curve. So if we have too much or too little, we're going to have negative side effects. So too much all the time leads to things like anxiety and hormonal issues. If it is too high at nighttime, we'll have like insomnia. Like, there's lots of things that contribute, like lots of symptoms that happen from having these irregular cortisol levels in our body. So regulating that curve is going to be super, super key. And you're going to see how this influences every single hormone in our body. So now that we talked a little bit about cortisol, I want to really focus on perimenopause and menopause. That's why you're here, right? So when estrogen and progesterone go down during perimenopause and menopause, like, it's supposed to happen, it's going to happen, but we want to make sure it's a nice slow decline. It's not an aggressive drop. We don't have crazy highs and lows. Like, we want to make this as smooth of a roller coaster ride as possible, not those crazy upside down loop-de-looped ones that leave you feeling pretty exhausted and terrible, and they're not that great of a time. So something that you have to be aware of, though, is that when those hormones start to decrease, we have a much harder time buffering stress. So this is where people are like, oh man, I haven't changed anything, and all of a sudden I'm gaining weight. But you have, your body's hormones are starting to change, so you can't handle what you were doing before. So for example, things that are going to elevate your cortisol levels are fasting. There's studies on this now. I love it. Caffeine on an empty stomach, skipping meals, inconsistent calorie intake. So high one day, low one day. This is why I always ask for a few days of tracking so I can see how much you're fluctuating day to day. Low carbohydrate diets increase your stress response, your cortisol. We're going to see that if you're not sleeping enough, if you're doing a ton of exercise, you're not recovering, lots of HIIT workouts, lots of cardio. If you are go, go, go all the time, you're type A, you're like, you're more predisposed to have higher cortisol levels because you're just go, 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 go all the time. From the moment you wake up to when you go to sleep, you're working through your lunch breaks. We're not having food regularly throughout the day. We're not having carbs in our meals. So our lunch is just a salad with some chicken, right? Then you have like your family stress and financial stress and work stress and deadlines and taking care of sick parents. Then you're adding trauma on top of that. And then if you're sick, adding in alcohol, all of these things are going to cause a rise in your cortisol levels. So what you were doing before, maybe your body could have handled the type of exercise and the lack of sleep and the skipping meals and the fasting and the caffeine on an empty stomach. Your body could handle that before. That was like a 9 out of 10. And then if you went up to the 10 out of 10, that's when you would see the cortisol spikes come up. And that's where you would start having all these kind of symptoms and issues, right? But now, during perimenopause and onwards, and this is postmenopause as well, when estrogen and progesterone go down, now to get us to a 10 out of 10 to see that cortisol release only takes a 5 out of 10. Now we see cortisol being increased at a much lower threshold because estrogen and progesterone aren't there to really buffer that stress response anymore. So now all it takes is a poor night's sleep, not eating enough, skipping meals, and like one of your kids pissing you off. Now that cortisol is too high. Whereas before you could pile on things all the time. And you're like, no, I'm handling it well. I haven't changed anything. I don't know what's happening. This is what's happening. Just that small change in hormones and your ability to buffer stress. You're not adjusting your lifestyle and nutrition to help you since you don't have those hormones there anymore. This is huge. So again, we need to be aware that we are far more likely to have hormonal imbalances because of high cortisol or low cortisol during perimenopause and menopause, because our body cannot handle that like it used to. So, okay, Steph, you talk about like how it's causing hormonal imbalances, all this stuff, yada, yada, yada. Explain. Okay, so we talked about last day how like low progesterone and low estrogen and low testosterone and high androgens and low thyroid can all make it really hard for you to lose weight. And it can lead to sudden weight gain. It can lead to weight loss resistance. It can lead to progressive weight gain, right? There was a statistic that was shared just the other day. Why I don't take pictures of these, I don't know why. But it's something like with perimenopause, initial weight gains like 5 to 10 pounds. And then you gain about 1.5 pounds to 3 pounds every year after that. Because people aren't doing this, right? People aren't actually adjusting things to work with their body. Instead, you're working against your body. And the harder you're pushing in workouts and the more you're cutting your calories, we're seeing cortisol go up even more, causing more and more of these issues, and which is why you can't lose weight. So let's talk about progesterone first. We talked about how progesterone is huge when it comes to fluid retention. So a lot of the times when we see women come in with like really sudden excessive weight gain, low progesterone is usually one of the first things that we want to look at. And progesterone is also that hormone that makes you feel calm and relaxed and grounded, and like things just roll off your back. You can deal with it. Not a big deal. Like life is good. When someone comes in with like lots of anxiety and they're like, little things are making me mad and I'm more irritable and I have this sudden weight gain and I feel like I'm puffy. I feel like I'm holding on to fluid and more bloating. Low progesterone can be a huge factor to this. And when we go through perimenopause and menopause, like I mentioned, progesterone is naturally going to start declining, but it's supposed to be a very like smooth, slow decline, like a very long, not at a big slope slide. Like it's just a gradual decline. Most women are good, boom, tank. And then all of a sudden, poof, scale goes up. So the reason this is happening is when cortisol goes up, it actually steals the precursor pregnenolone to be able to produce progesterone. So progesterone cannot be produced in the presence of cortisol. And we talked about it. If you are, under eating, over exercising, not sleeping, you're fasting, you're having caffeine on an empty stomach, your calories are one day high, one day low, you're kind of going up and down all the time, your body doesn't know what to expect, you have all the extra life stressors, your dog pooping on the ground, whatever it might be, progesterone cannot be produced. So it's going to drop super quick, the scale goes up and then you panic and you go, oh my gosh, what's going wrong? So then you cut your calories. You start doing more exercise. But what does that do? It increases your cortisol even more, which further decreases your ability to be able to produce progesterone, leading to more weight gain, more fluid retention, more horrific hormonal symptoms, the hot flashes, the irritability, the depression, the anxiety, like so many things. So cortisol, if it is high, is going to reduce progesterone production at a very drastic rate compared to if we actually dealt with our cortisol levels appropriately by eating enough food, having enough carbs, all the things we're going to talk about at the end of the podcast here. So that's just progesterone. Then we have estrogen levels. So cortisol can do both, unfortunately. It can lead to estrogen dominance because we see that estrogen dominance is usually due to low progesterone compared to estrogen. Both can be low, but if progesterone's too low compared to estrogen, even in low levels, you're going to have symptoms of estrogen dominance. But we also see that cortisol decreases our estrogen production, which again is going to be an issue. And we're also going to see that it can lead to estrogen dominance by producing more estrogen compared to progesterone because we're going to be holding on to fat mass, right? We talked about cortisol needs somewhere to go. It's stored in belly fat. So it's hard to get rid of that belly fat as long as we're stressed out. Estrogen, the kind that we don't want, is produced in belly fat, which can then contribute to further estrogen dominance and the inability to be able to lose weight. Again, that comes with a whole myriad of symptoms. We have when estrogen is low from cortisol not letting it be produced because the adrenals now, which are supposed to be able to produce some estrogen for you, are now so focused on that stress response and so focused on producing cortisol. Now your estrogen and testosterone both can't be produced the way they're supposed to. And testosterone is actually supposed to come up during perimenopause and menopause to help make up for the fact that estrogen goes down. However, in a lot of women that we see, testosterone's crazy low. And when testosterone is low and estrogen is low, we see our blood sugar goes to crap. So this is where people are like, man, like I went to the doctor and I haven't changed anything. And now all of a sudden, like my A1C is high. Like my blood sugars are not good. They're telling me I might be pre-diabetic. They're telling me to cut my carbs. But we know that if you're cutting out your carbs, your body is going to break down muscle mass to take it to your liver, to turn it into sugar, to dump it to your bloodstream anyway. So it's not actually going to help with your blood sugar response. I actually have a study highlighted on one of my stories on Instagram, or on my highlight story on Instagram that you can go see, that explains this as well. So we start seeing blood sugar be an issue. So now we have energy crashes. We have more cravings. Our appetite goes up. We feel like these cravings are just so intense. And the more we have issues with blood sugar, the more likely our body is going to hold onto body fat, right? And it makes weight loss attempts much more challenging because, I mean, it's tough when you feel like you're always hungry or you're good, and then boom, you're not, right? And this is also because of these hormonal changes that are due to cortisol increasing, right? So this is why de-stressing is so important so that we can have balanced testosterone and estrogen and progesterone levels. Then we have high androgens. Somehow, when cortisol increases, it also increases one of the pathways that increases our androgens, which can lead to PCOS type symptoms, can lead to weight gain, more blood sugar issues, more insulin resistance. So we know that if we are focusing on de-stressing and getting our cortisol under control, it can actually help bring those androgen levels down. So this is why that is so important to address and be aware of when we're looking at hormonal issues. And then people are like, well, I took HRT, but it didn't do anything. Yeah, HRT is awesome for symptoms. It can be great for some other things like, maintaining your bone mass if you're taking like bioidentical estrogen. So it can help decrease the rate of your bone density loss, which is awesome. However, as much as it can make you feel awesome, it's not going to improve your metabolism. And if you aren't de-stressing and addressing these cortisol levels, that problem is still happening underneath. So while you might feel better with HRT, which is awesome, and I love that, if that's an option for you, go do that. Like, we want you to feel well, but you have to be aware HRT isn't going to be the thing that helps you lose weight. It's not going to improve your metabolism. It's not going to make your body better at burning calories. We need to address the root cause, which for most women has something to do with the cortisol response. There can be other issues at play, obviously, but unless we address cortisol, it is very rare that we're going to see success. Like, it just doesn't happen. The other thing that happens with cortisol, like I mentioned, is blood sugar really goes to crap. And we know this already happens during perimenopause and menopause, as I mentioned. So the things that you're doing to try and improve your blood sugar by cutting carbs and fasting and eating low calorie actually increase that stress response. So your body breaks down more muscle to send to your liver, to turn into sugar to put into your bloodstream. So your blood sugar is still going to go up in the absence of carbs, in the absence of food, even if you're eating low calorie, which we don't want. That's a huge stress on our body. And we know we need to maintain muscle mass because with estrogen, when it starts to go down, and if you're dealing with low testosterone as well, it's really, really hard for your body to be able to put on muscle mass and maintain muscle mass because cortisol sends a signal to break down muscle mass. Low calorie sends a signal to break down muscle mass. Low carb sends a signal to break down muscle mass. Doing a bunch of cardio signals the body to break down more muscle mass. Low testosterone isn't there to send the signal to build. Low estrogen, now we don't have the signal from estrogen to help us to build. So the way that we approach lifestyle and nutrition and exercise have to be conducive to sending the signal to the brain that, hey, we need to build more muscle, but also that we're not eliciting a huge stress response because we know we can't handle as much stress as before. Cortisol will just go up and like counteract everything that you're doing. So this is a huge part of really understanding how your body functions and what a huge, massive role cortisol and stress plays into this. Stress is, I believe, like 99% of all causes of disease. When we look at everything in the literature, the stress response and the hormones that are released and the hormones that are affected, like we see how that affects blood sugar. We see how that affects our cardiovascular health, our hormone health, our metabolic health. Like if you focused on this aspect, you would be shocked at how much better you feel, how much better your body functions. And a healthy body will respond to weight loss. A body that is not healthy will not. Like it's your body just isn't resilient enough to stress, and it's not going to respond the way that you want. That's why you're cutting calories and cutting carbs and doing all these things and not seeing changes, because you're actually making the things that you're struggling with, the changes that you're going through perimenopause, worse by doing those things. The next thing about cortisol that you need to be aware of is that it affects your gut health and your liver. So we see liver function go down because stress is very hard on the liver, because as we talked about, it does this thing where it converts everything to sugar, right, for energy in your body. But also our body then just can't like detox things properly. This doesn't mean do a detox tea. Those do not work, I promise. So we need to do things to improve our liver health. And the way we do that is by focusing on de-stressing. When cortisol is really high, we see tons of issue with gut health. So like I said, it can break down the smooth muscle lining of your intestines for energy, which leads to things like leaky gut. We're also going to see cortisol increases inflammation in your body. And we know inflammation in your gut causes a lot of issues. It's going to lead to more bloating, more constipation. It can lead to autoimmune conditions and food sensitivities that you never had before. And this is because when we're in this constant state of fight or flight, blood goes from our gut, because we want blood in our gut to help digest. It helps like our intestines contract and move things along. That's what you want. However, when we're in a stress state, our body starts to prioritize what's important. So your body thinks that you are in a state of danger, that you are running away from a bear, or you're going to fight this bear, even though you might just be at your desk crunching under deadlines, or you're just not sleeping enough, or you have different stressors in your life, you're not eating enough food. Like your body doesn't care. It's just getting the signal that we're stressed. This is what's happening. So what happens is your body starts to prioritize what is important in this state of fight or flight. So you know what's not important? Hormone function. We can live without it, right? It doesn't feel great, but it's not essential to have those hormones in your body. You can still function, just it doesn't really feel like that. You're going to see digestion really slow down, right? You're going to see your hunger cues are all messed up. Either you're never hungry or you're always hungry. You are going to see, because that blood flow goes away from our gut and goes to our arms and legs to fight this bear, run away from this bear, even though you're just sitting at your desk, bloating gets worse throughout the day because you don't have the blood flow going to your gut to help get things moving. So you end up getting more backed up, you get more gassy, you get more bloated. Like the bloating just gets worse and worse and worse throughout the day. And I know a lot of women we talk to that are dealing with this. This is a stress response, and we can fix this quite easily by eating breakfast, not having caffeine on an empty stomach, eating enough food, having your carbs at every single meal. So important. But also, you need to take time to de-stress. Can you find 5 minutes of your day to lay on the floor or in your bed, put your feet up against the wall to bring the blood flow back into your gut, to help get your gut moving again, to get your digestive system moving, to lower those cortisol levels? Focus on deep breathing, slowing down your heart rate, slowing down your breathing to get you out of fight or flight at least once a day. Can you do that just once a day for 5 minutes? That would make a huge, huge difference. We do it with all of the clients that we have in our program, and it's wonderful. It's amazing. I love when people send me pictures of them doing it with their friends at work, at the office, with their kids, with their partners, with their pets. It's amazing. I also get to see a lot of really cool socks. It's great. So we know that if your gut health is not good, so if your stress levels are very, very high and we start seeing every day, we're getting bloating, we're seeing more inflammation in your gut. We know that leads to other things down the road. So we see gut dysbiosis, we see the food sensitivities, we see the SIBO, we see, all these different things that just get really messed up in your gut. And when your gut doesn't feel good, it's hard to want to eat. You're not in a good mood. It affects your mood. We know there's a very clear relationship between gut health and cognition, your mental health. So there's so many things that contribute to this. And then it makes it harder again to lose weight. That can contribute to more hormonal imbalances like estrogen dominance if we're not going to the bathroom every day. So again, cortisol is affecting another huge system in our body. And the issue is our healthcare system really tries to isolate everything. Like, this is just a thyroid problem. This is just a heart problem. This is just a blood sugar problem. But you can see now everything is connected. So cortisol is affecting our hormone balance, which is also affecting our blood sugar. But then if we see estrogen go down and progesterone go down, we also see our blood sugar start to get worse. And back and forth, right? And then we know that's going to lead to more inflammation, which leads to gut health things. So it's you can't completely isolate something. You need to take a step back and see, how is this whole body functioning? How does it work together? What is the root cause? What is the one thing that we can improve all systems in the body? Because we know if we start addressing the really big red flags, this is why we do 6 assessments with every woman that comes in our program, is to figure out where is the biggest red flags. Because we know if we address, let's say cortisol ends up being the thing that's really, really high. We know if we improve cortisol, it's going to take care of a lot of the gut health stuff. It's going to take care of a lot of the hormone stuff. Will it take care of everything? Maybe, maybe not. But we know if we address the big thing, the big cause, it's going to make everything so much easier, as opposed to just giving you medications and never actually addressing the root thing, because that problem's still manifesting and getting worse underneath, and they're just going to keep giving you more meds, but the real problem is never addressed. That is a problem with our system. This is why I left healthcare. And the last one I wanted to talk about is thyroid function. This one is huge. I did a podcast on episode 4, I think it was, of this podcast. So we'll try and do another thyroid function podcast. But if you go back to that one, I go very into depth as to everything that you need to know about thyroid function. But when cortisol goes up, our body stops telling our thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. So in a high stress state, all doctors are going to test for TSH, right? That's the thing they test for thyroid hormone, even though it's not enough. So I'll get into that in a little bit here. But as long as your cortisol levels are high, your body cannot do a ton of things at once. It prioritizes dealing with the stress. Thyroid does not get the signal to produce any more thyroid hormone. So then what we see here is that stress response is really high, and then people start to panic because the thyroid is what tells your body how many calories to burn at rest. So if thyroid function starts to slow down, our body's burning less calories, so we're not seeing weight loss anymore, or we start seeing weight gain, people panic and start cutting more calories, cutting their carbs, fasting, doing a bunch of exercise. That's insane. And their thyroid function gets worse and worse and worse. and their metabolism gets slower and slower and slower. So your body burns less and less and less calories. And now we're at a point where now you're hypothyroid, which makes weight loss a lot more challenging because your body just isn't as responsive anymore, or you actually end up with things like Hashimoto's. So this is a huge thing to be aware of because carbohydrates, I'm going to talk about later, are huge for lowering your cortisol, for regulating your cortisol curve. And we know that if you are able to bring cortisol down, your thyroid function can improve. Therefore, when we work with women going through hypothyroidism, they eat a lot of carbs. And it does wonders for them. They finally have energy, so they're able to move again. Metabolism starts to come up. Thyroid numbers start to improve. And they can start seeing changes, but it takes a lot longer. So you want to catch yourself before you get to that point, because the number of women that I have talked to that realized too late that doing the keto and the crazy exercise and not eating enough altogether, they gave themselves hypothyroidism, which sucks because during perimenopause and menopause, we're already at an increased risk of developing hypothyroidism. Women have an 80% more likely chance of developing hypothyroidism than men. And then we're seeing this reduced stress response that we can handle when our hormones go down. And then we start doing all the things that we used to do to try and lose weight, which actually makes our body function worse. So this is where we see, like, if you start eating enough food, we can improve your thyroid function, but there does become a point where it ends up being like, we can't get you to be not hypothyroid anymore, but we can get you results, but it does take a lot longer if you're in that situation. So spread the word to all the ladies. Please eat your carbohydrates so you don't end up with hypothyroidism. But the things about the thyroid tests that I want to talk about are, if you're getting tested, TSH just tells you if your body is yelling at your thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. That's all that means. Then we have T3 and T4 that you also want to test for, which tells you how much of the active and inactive form of thyroid hormone you have. So that way you can see, okay, is my thyroid actually producing enough or not enough? Or is my body just not converting enough of the inactive to the active form? And then the other thing that you want to get tested is your thyroid antibodies to see if your body is like having an autoimmune response. So this is why getting that full test is so important. I hate when people only get tested TSH, because all that tells me is your body yelling at your thyroid to produce thyroid hormone? I also want to know, is your body producing enough thyroid hormone? Is it converting enough thyroid hormone? And is your body attacking your thyroid? Because depending on those numbers, like your TSH could be fine, but your body could not be producing enough thyroid hormone or not converting it to a useful form. So we need to understand more as to what's happening in your body. And this is the kind of stuff that, again, drives me crazy, because like, you need to have a better picture as to what the heck is going on in your body. And like, your practitioner should care enough. So argue for this and tell them that. You can clip that, write it out, whatever you need, take it to your practitioner, because you deserve to know what's going on in your body. Wow, you guys, I am like, we're 30 minutes and I'm through page 1. Oh my goodness. Okay. Lastly, what I want to touch on here before we go into a little bit more of like the nitty gritties plus what to do to improve your cortisol levels, because that's what we all want to know, right? But I always like to provide you with why it's important so that we'll actually do it and follow through. But it takes so much less stress to cause cortisol to go up once we're in perimenopause and onwards, when we lose that progesterone and estrogen. So the things that you think you are doing to improve your weight loss, to get quote unquote healthier, could actually be making things worse, increasing your cortisol and preventing you from losing belly fat, because that is where we have 4 times the receptor in our bodies than anywhere else. So as long as cortisol is high, your body will hold onto belly fat because it needs somewhere for cortisol to go. So what are the phases of cortisol like? Okay, so let's say my cortisol goes up and then it goes down. What if it's up all the time? What if it's low all the time? I'm going to dive into that. But for me, getting my cortisol tested was really eye-opening, because you always think that you are the exception to the rule, right? You're like, I handle it well, like so-and-so has it way worse. I do a good job of handling my stress. Exercise is my therapy, right? We say all this crazy crap. And like, if I would have gotten my cortisol tested in the morning with blood, I would think my cortisol was fine. But I did a 24-hour Dutch test, which we do offer. And if you want information on how all that works, just let me know. But it takes your cortisol throughout the day. And what I found was in the morning, cortisol went up, which is fine. That's where it's supposed to be. And then it's supposed to come down as the day goes on. My body is really good at producing cortisol and really crappy at breaking it down and getting rid of it. So when my cortisol was supposed to be coming down, we saw it keep going up and up and up, and then it would tank in the afternoon, which is why I was feeling tired, why I was having some cravings and things like that. So it all made sense because I was running on stress hormones all freaking day, despite thinking I'm handling it well, exercise is my therapy, like yada, 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 right? All that crap we tell ourselves all the time. And then I realized like that was tanking my progesterone. My androgens were high. So I was dealing with PCOS, which I already knew that was a thing. So I already have to work harder to de-stress, but it is what it is. But I thought I would be like, quote unquote, good. I was not quote unquote good. My progesterone was like really low. So I worked really hard for a long time to really focus on this stuff so that we could get pregnant. Because if you don't have progesterone, you can't get pregnant, which is a blessing. Now we're pregnant. We're having a little boy. We just found out the other day, which is so exciting. Can't wait to meet him. Everything's developing good and all that kind of stuff. Sidebar, just really excited about it. But the Dutch test really did tell me a lot and made me realize, okay, I have to take things a little bit more seriously because like, you know, you're kind of doing it and then you're like, I feel fine. And then no, like it tells you, right? So for me, that helped me a lot stick to my plan, make sure I was eating enough food, prioritizing sleep. That was like the number one thing. And it made all the difference. So here are the 4 different stages of adrenal insufficiency, is what we call it. So the first one is your alarm phase. This is a normal, healthy response that we want to see. It's characterized by high cortisol, but this is where like you have like an event or something happens and you have that stress, you have that cortisol spike, it goes up. You feel like overstimulated, you know, or like you're super stressed, or now you're like hyper focused, go, go, go. You're like dialed in on something because you got some sort of stress going on. So maybe it was like something your boss said or whatever, and it's like, boom, you're dialed, you're good, you're go, go, go. It feels like you are like a boss. You can get anything done. You're like, yep, I've got this. You might feel like a bit of slight stress or anxiety, maybe some like minor GI issues, but nothing too crazy, but it goes up and then it comes down. It doesn't stay like this forever, or it might be like this at the beginning. And then you start moving into stage 2. And stage 2 is also characterized by high cortisol, but this is what we like to call wired and tired. So this is where a lot of women come and talk to us. They start experiencing energy crashes in the afternoon. Blood sugar starts to become a bit of an issue. You start waking up at nighttime, particularly between like 1 and like 4. You typically are more irritable. You get more cravings. This is your body's natural response to stress, is what's supposed to happen. And typically these people will see like a second wind at nighttime. Like you're good during the day, then you're exhausted, and then boom, you have like the surge of energy again in the evening. This is that wired and tired stage 2 high cortisol. So if we can catch you in stage 1, stage 2, typically your reverse diet won't take as long. We don't see, like you haven't been in that stress state for too long. Then we start going into stage 3. Stage 3 is what we like to call resistance. This is now where your cortisol is low because you've been go, 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 that now the communication from your brain to your adrenals just isn't working as well anymore. It's too stressed. It's like you had a highway with like rush hour going on and on and on and on. And now there's a crash. And now the signal can't get from the brain to the adrenals anymore to produce cortisol. So now your cortisol is testing low. So this is where if you are a person who starts testing low, your reverse diet's typically going to take longer. Your journey's going to be a little bit longer because we're past the stage of like, oh, we just got to lower it. It's like, no, now we got to reestablish like proper communication, hormone pathways, all that kind of stuff. So and it's not to scare you. It's just to give you a realistic expectation that your reverse diet is going to take you longer than you want it to, which sucks to hear, but at least there's an answer and we can address this. That's a good thing. So this is where you start feeling really exhausted. Blood sugar starts to swing quite a bit. Like it ends up being a lot more extreme, we find. You're definitely having sleep issues. Digestion is not great. Sex drive is pretty darn low if existent at all. Caffeine doesn't really seem to do anything for you anymore. Your sex hormones are absolutely affected. Like production is just not good. Your thyroid function really decreases. This is where we really start to see a lot of weight gain or weight loss resistance, and your recovery from things start to take a lot longer. So it's like you felt like you could bounce back from workouts or stressors a lot easier, and it seems to take so much longer. So you have like a stressful response, and then all of a sudden, or you have a stressful event, and it's like you feel tired for days after. This is that low cortisol stage. And then we have stage 4, which is exhaustion. This is where you are honestly just so burnt the F out. You just can't deal with stress. Your reactions are not the best. You're very reactive. This is where we start seeing symptoms of like depression, lots of cravings. This is definitely where we're seeing abdominal fat accumulation. You can start getting dizzy upon standing because your blood sugar regulation is so poor. It's not a great place to be. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of women that we see that are in that position. It sucks. The reverse diet takes quite a bit longer. You have to be so much more patient during the maintenance phase. These individuals, their metabolism is just so drastically affected as well that there is a greater chance of seeing a little bit more weight gain in a reverse diet. So this is where like having someone walk you through it can be really helpful, or like making sure you're really focusing on being consistent and increasing quite slowly, because your body is just like the communication and the signals, just things aren't working the way they should. And this isn't meant to scare you. I know many of you are like pooping your pants right now because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. All the things that you talked about. I'm feeling poorly. I'm working really hard. My hormones are crappy. I didn't realize I was doing worse. Like we end up getting really upset with ourselves almost, because we're like, I cannot believe I did this to myself. Like, how could I let this happen? I can't believe I was doing all these things. You did the best you could with the information that you had at the time. Give yourself some grace. It can be a lot to take in, but now you know, and now you can make better choices moving forward. And that's the most important part. Because imagine if you didn't know, you would just keep doing what you were doing and making the situation worse. So view this as an opportunity. Be excited of like, now I know what's going on. I can fix it. I have a plan. So let's talk about all the things that you can do to help improve those cortisol levels. Because again, this is going to be so monumental. The stress assessment we do with our clients is like, it's the thing that we look at the most, that paired with our hormonal symptom assessment, to ensure that we're moving in the right direction, that we can gauge timelines, see if things are being affected. What do we have to really change and, do to really optimize the scores that we need? So the first and foremost, number 1 always is going to be eating enough food. If you are not eating enough food, that is a stress on your body. The longer that you are in a deficit, the more stress you're putting your body under, the more diets that you've done, the more stress that you've already endured. So your body is already not in a happy place. So this is where I talk to them. They're like, oh, I've been in deficit for 6 months. I'm like, no, you're not. Now this is your new maintenance, because your body's metabolism slows down through all the things that we talked about, like cortisol affecting your hormones and your blood sugar and your thyroid function and your liver health and your gut health. All those things internally work to decrease the calories out portion of the equation. And if you're in a deficit for too long and you're in a stress state for too long, your body's maintenance calories are now lower. And you can only lower up to a certain point where then your body doesn't function well, because then we start seeing hormones getting even worse and worse and worse. And you feel like garbage and you keep gaining weight and like you're exhausted and you're not sleeping and you're irritable and you have all these symptoms and your blood sugar is crappy. Your blood pressure might even be going up. All of these terrible things that like doctors are telling you, right? And they're telling you, you need to lose weight. You need to lose weight. No, what we need to do is de-stress things appropriately. Eat enough food to take that stress off your body. This is huge. We do this with every single woman who comes into our program. We need to slowly get you eating at your maintenance levels to improve your health first. Otherwise, your body will not respond, because it's too stressed and you'll just keep holding onto that belly fat. Number 2, sleep. Sleep is huge. If you're not sleeping, you never allow your cortisol levels to come down. You are constantly in a state of fight or flight. You don't allow for growth hormone to come up to repair your muscles. That only happens during deep sleep. So going from 6 hours to 7 to 8 hours makes a massive difference. When cortisol goes down, our sleepy hormone melatonin gets to come up, which means we have a much better sleep. But how do we get melatonin up? We don't just take it, because cortisol is just going to break that down anyways. So it's not going to work that well. A lot of people get side effects from melatonin as well. But the thing that helps bring cortisol down and melatonin up are carbohydrates. Yes, carbohydrates before bed increase melatonin, decrease cortisol, and stabilize blood sugars at nighttime so that you fall asleep easier and stay asleep. This doesn't mean chips and donuts and chocolate, because that'll digest quickly. You'll get a blood sugar spike and drop, cortisol come up and wake you up anyways. So what you want to do is have something like oats, have some oatmeal, have some of those protein balls, have meat, cheese, and crackers, have popcorn and a turkey pepperoni stick, have a slice of bread that's whole grain with some peanut butter on it or egg. There are so many options to pair a slower digesting carb with a protein or fat, and that's going to help you sleep so much better. This is something we do with almost every single woman that comes into our program, and it is life-changing. It doesn't have to be a big snack, just something little, okay? The next one is learning to chill the F out. If anyone tells me to calm down, that doesn't work, right? But we need to actively find ways to decrease our stressors, to tap into that rest and digest portion of our nervous system, to bring cortisol down. Stress is stress. Like, our body doesn't differentiate where it comes from. It doesn't know that you're just trying to lose weight, like our body, it doesn't know that you're just thinking negative thoughts about yourself that increases cortisol as well. It just sees danger, cortisol goes up. It doesn't matter. So we need to be aware of all the things that increase cortisol so that we can get our body to chill out. Like, we're doing all this intense exercise and not sleeping, and we're waking up at 3 a.m. to get a workout in, even though you're only getting 5 hours of sleep. That's not conducive to good health. That's not going to help you get anywhere. So we need to make sure that you are doing things, even just 5 freaking minutes, to calm our body down. Can you give yourself 5 minutes? I think you deserve 5 minutes. 5 minutes of coloring in a coloring book, reading a book, doing a gratitude journal. Maybe it's going for a leisurely walk or putting your feet up on the wall. Maybe it's knitting, crocheting, something that fills up your cup and brings your heart rate down and slows down your breathing. So doing crazy exercise, no, that's just making the problem worse. 5 to 10 minutes a day of just something for you that calms you down, that feels good, brings your heart rate and breathing down, and you're just relaxing. Something for you. Out of the 24 hours you get in a day, you deserve to give yourself 5 to 10 minutes of something for you. The next one is exercise. Exercise is great. I'm never telling anyone not to exercise. However, the way that we exercise and where your body is at currently, those two have to match. So exercise is going to stimulate the release of cortisol to give you energy to do the tasks that you need to do. Okay, but high intensity drastically increases cortisol, which is not great, especially if we are in a deficit, right? Because we want to manage our stress, because in perimenopause and menopause, we can't handle that as well. But we need to be aware that, like, working out fasted, not a great idea, because we see that when estrogen goes down, we have a harder time accessing energy stores. So that increases cortisol even more to try and provide energy into your bloodstream to be able to do the activity. So you might think that, like, working out fasted is a great way to save your calories and burn more fat. Actually, statistically, through science and studies, women burn more calories when they are in a fed state. Even if you work out in the morning, can you put a handful of grapes into your mouth? Can you put some berries in? Can you have a rice cake with some nut butter? You can do that. It doesn't have to be a big meal, just something small. It doesn't have to be crazy. You want instant sugar into your bloodstream. Okay. The other thing that you need to be focusing on is sending the signal to your body to build muscle. Because we talked about before how low estrogen, low testosterone, low carb, fasting, doing a bunch of cardio, not getting enough sleep. All of those trigger your body to want to get rid of muscle, which we want to build and maintain as best as we can. So being fed will help with that. But secondly, you have to be lifting heavy enough. So every week your body should be like, dang, Steph keeps trying to lift heavier. We should probably make sure that we're maintaining this muscle mass because every week she's trying to get stronger. So we should probably make sure we're preserving that, right? Your body responds to the stimulus that you give it. If you're doing the same weights all the time, the same routine, if you're only taking 30-second rest, that's just cardio. That's cardio with light weights. You're not actually stimulating muscle growth. So you want to take like 2 to 3 minute breaks in between. So you do your 10 squats, then you sit for 2 minutes, then you do it again. You want to make sure you can't lift heavier than the rep range. So let's say you're doing 8 to 12 reps. If you can do 14, you need to up your weight, slow down the movement, focus on tension, pausing, make it so that you can't get more than 12 reps. That's how you challenge your body to send the signal to build muscle. So don't be doing all these 30 seconds burpees. Like burpees don't build muscle. They don't. That's just a really terrible, not enjoyable way to do cardio. So we want to make sure that you're doing that. The other thing too that we see a lot of women doing is they're not consuming carbohydrates the day before. They do a low carb day on their like non-workout days and then higher carb on the day they work out. Just have your carbs consistent because it takes 24 to 36 hours for your muscle glycogen stores to restore. So to have energy there to be able to do the things. If you're not having carbs the next day, you don't get to utilize that. So you need to make sure you're having enough carbs all of the time. The next one is stimulants. Avoid stimulants after 2 p.m. because they increase cortisol, which again is going to negatively affect your sleep, your metabolism, your hormones, all those things. And caffeine's not just coffee. Those are in sodas. Those are in chocolate. Those are in a lot of the drinks that you have, right? So be aware of that. But the thing too is like those stimulants don't actually provide energy. They just prevent you from feeling tired. They don't actually provide any energy to your body. So you might think it's like a boost of energy. It's not. It's just blocking the ability to feel tired. So you're not actually benefiting your body. So avoid stimulants after 2 p.m. No stimulants on an empty stomach because we know if you're having coffee on an empty stomach, boom, there goes cortisol. It affects your appetite. And then you're not going to eat and then you're going to have a crash later on and you're going to feel like garbage, have cravings, affect your blood sugars, all those things. Carbohydrates is the next one. You need to have carbohydrates. Most women need to be eating more grams of carbohydrates than they are protein. Protein, you should be at 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, or usually I max people out around 150 grams, which means you need to be eating a lot more carbs. There should be a starchy carb present at every single meal. This is what provides you with energy. So we also know that carbohydrates are going to decrease your cortisol levels. We know carbohydrates are really great for thyroid function. Studies show that women that do low carb versus a higher carb diet have worse thyroid function than those who eat their carbs. Thyroid determines how many calories your body burns at rest, making weight loss a lot easier if it's functioning properly. So eat your carbs. So people are always worried about their blood sugar though, right? So this is where learning how to eat your carbs is important. Try to have some veggies before, try and have some protein before, then dip into your carbs. That changes your blood sugar spike because your food is going to empty more slowly out of your stomach. Choosing higher fiber carbs where you're able. Choosing less processed foods because processed foods digest a lot quicker than non-processed foods, so our whole foods. If you're going to have a treat, have it after a meal so it's not affecting our blood sugars so much. And then also avoid drinking a ton of water around meals because when you do that, it actually empties your stomach a lot more quickly. It also affects the pH of your stomach acid, making digestion worse. So you experience a lot more bloating too. So have your carbs. You need them. They're so good for you. But again, listen to the last episode we did so you understand that like you need to increase your carbs slowly because it takes a lot more water to digest. So you are going to see the scale jump up. It's not fat, it's just water. The next one, fasting. Fasting statistically increases your cortisol levels. So if this is something that is an issue for you, fasting is not a great option for you. Can fasting work for some people? Yes. The people that I talk to, No, we don't fast with any of our clients. It's not great for your cortisol response. It's not great for your blood sugars. I don't like that it's just so widely everyone should do this, because it's not. You need to get assessed and see, is it appropriate for you? For most women, it's not. Plus, I'm not in the business of telling women not to eat. So there's that too. The next one is doing that feet up that we talked about, or any kind of de-stressing activity to bring your body into that rest and digest portion of your nervous system. Paying attention to inflammation, because cortisol increases inflammation, but inflammation also increases cortisol. So depending on the severity of the person, we're going to try and do everything else first before really addressing inflammation solely on its own. Because usually if we do all the other stuff, inflammation will improve. Like if you're improving your sleep, for example, and your food quality. But if that is a big issue, then we'll go to like a more anti-inflammatory style diet, aiming for less processed foods, lots of healthy fats like omega-3s, so coming from like fish and nuts, stuff like that. So being aware of the qualities of food and how they affect your inflammation can also make a difference. However, I would address all the other things first before diving into that. And the last one is blood sugar control, which we talked about a little bit. Blood sugar can make cortisol higher. Cortisol also makes blood sugar control worse. So you need to figure out which one is a bigger issue. Just adjusting how you eat and food timing can make a massive difference. The amount of women who come in with insulin resistance, and then we go through a food timing, making sure you're eating at certain intervals and then having enough carbohydrates. We help them with their insulin resistance so much, and it's amazing. So you don't need to cut carbs to improve insulin. That is false. I did a whole podcast on insulin resistance and blood sugar control in the past that you can go check out as well. I think it's also, to kind of tie us all up with a bow. Oh man, I'm like almost at an hour. Dang it, again. I used to do like 30-minute podcasts. I don't know what happened. But I think it's important for you all to realize that anything that you do to help regulate your cortisol levels, so by eating enough food, having the carbs, not fasting anymore, focusing on sleep, paying attention to your blood sugar, all those things, anything that you do that helps improve your cortisol curve and your cortisol levels is going to improve your metabolism. Your body is going to get better at burning calories. It's going to improve your energy so that you'll actually have motivation to want to work out, to want to meal prep, because when you're exhausted, you don't. It's going to reduce your brain fog. It's going to improve your concentration and your memory. It's going to decrease cravings. This is always a huge one. Reduce abdominal fat, improve your sleep quality, maintain and build muscle mass, improve your blood sugar control, decrease your anxiety, improve your hormone profile. So just by focusing on improving one thing, which is your cortisol, by any of the mechanisms that we talked about, any of the strategies, you can expect to see changes in all those categories. And you can't tell me that someone with a better metabolism, better energy, better like concentration and mindset, less cravings, better sleep, is able to put on muscle mass and has better hormone profile, isn't going to have an easier time losing weight than someone who doesn't have those things. So that's something to be very aware of. If you want to get assessed for this stuff, we do it for free in our Facebook group, or you can just message me or email me, whatever works best for you. I have had a lot of women taking us up on this. They did before, but now it's coming in more, which is awesome. I love helping you all so much. That being said, my messages do get backed up pretty easily. So the quickest way to get this assessed would absolutely be to book a consultation call. You can do that in the show notes. But if you would rather message me, do so. Just know that I will get back to you. I'm not ignoring you. It just takes me a few days usually to answer and catch up. Please share this with any women that need help. We don't run ads or anything like that. We're not trying to sell you anything. Just share this information so more people can understand how their body works and what they need to do to move forward. So again, if you need help figuring out what to do, how many calories to eat, if you're getting enough carbs, what the problem is, we do that for free. Just message me, book a consultation call. It's great talking to you again, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.